Hi there, my name is Hannah Phillips, and welcome to the second episode of Under the Brolly Season 2. This podcast aims to educate and inform the wider community about the lesser-known sexualities, gender identities, expressions, kinks and fetishes, collectively known as LGBTQ+. MyUmbrella LGBT+ is a volunteer-led project of Reading Pride, which was launched in 2015 to raise awareness of these identities. MyUmbrella can be reached in a number of ways, such as Facebook, Twitter, or on Instagram, or online via online form on our website. The details are shown on your screen below. In this episode, we'll be discussing lesbian visibility and the history of the lesbian flags currently in circulation with special guest, VP of Member Services at InterPride, Debbie Brixey, whom is currently a committee member of Whitney Pride, former chair of Oxford Pride in 2019, and has helped out with Bicester Pride and Abingdon Pride when they started out. Later in the show, we'll be joined by Chair and Secretary of Reading Autistic Pride, Rachel and Ian Cotton, covering World Autism Day.
I'm the VP of Member Services at InterPride, which means my role is to reach out to the members, and we are a global organisation. We represent prides from, I think it's 70 plus countries around the world. Obviously, everybody has their own challenges, and what we're there is to make sure that people are aware of what is happening, to try and support people, to try and make people get together. We're working very hard at the moment to re-establish a mentoring program so that we can get prides who may be struggling, especially during this COVID time, to talk to other prides who've gone through things and to help with things like very, very basic things sometimes, like how do you organise a parade, all of that sort of thing, because it differs from country to country, it even differs from city to city. So we're there to try and reach out and make sure that we represent the needs of our members. We're there to talk to people, to highlight things that are happening throughout the world, and my job is to try and make sure that the members get heard wherever they need to be heard.
We are Ian and Rachel Cotton, obviously a husband and wife team. Rachel is really the brains behind this outfit. She started Autistic Pride Reading with the idea that we needed better representation for autistic people, not just here, but all around the country. But we started, we were concentrating locally, just to produce more positivity into the autistic community. Sorry, I should hand over to you since you're the brains.
Oh, well, Autistic Pride isn't my concept, it's a general concept, and we'll talk about them more later on, but it is from previous pride movements, which we owe a lot to. I just wanted to do something because I got diagnosed and I was just fed up with being faced with negativity, and I felt that autistic people have higher levels of PTSD, we have higher levels of any mental health condition that you can think of, and I just feel that if we can at least start to feel good ourselves on the inside, we'll do better outside. So that's the reason behind it, and that's why we're here, because I'm autistic, kids are. He's not diagnosed, his choice. But just to try and start smashing it up a bit.
Lesbian Visibility Day is an annual awareness campaign held on the 26th of April. Its origins are unknown, but the campaign is believed to have launched in 2008 and since spread across the world thanks to the internet. Pride and Visibility Days dedicated to different groups that make up the LGBTQ+ community are extremely important because they help raise awareness of the specific struggles and needs of each of these groups. Lesbian Visibility Day celebrates lesbian role models, culture, and diversity, as well as raising awareness for the issues that lesbians have to face. In terms of medical issues, for example, many women who have sex with women neglect to see a gynecologist when they become sexually active and lack information about the prevention of STDs that can be transmitted during lesbian sex. As far as mental health issues are concerned, anxiety is more likely to appear among lesbian and bisexual women than heterosexual women. Depression is a significant problem among the lesbians who have to hide their sexual orientation, experience religious or ethnic discrimination, or go through relationship problems with no support system. Not to mention that corrective rapes and other hate crimes against lesbian women are still common in some parts of the world. Debbie, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's very good to highlight the things that many lesbian women have to go through. I think there's a slight tendency for lesbians to be not forgotten, I think possibly overlooked, I think is probably the expression that I would use here, because we cover a very wide range, as does everybody, obviously, but there's an awful lot of women who are affected by poverty. There are an awful lot of women who can't join in with some of the things like Pride arranging, for instance. One of the reasons that I got involved with Pride was that I was aware of the fact there weren't many lesbians who were very visible within it, and I'm sure that part of the reason that you see me these days is because I am a very visible lesbian, and I don't care, frankly. I am a very visible lesbian for a reason, because I want people to be able to say, look, there is somebody. For instance, I'm the VP of Member Services at InterPride, and that was a very deliberate thing, because you don't often see lesbians in roles at that level. You see a few, but not that many. And so we need to be seen. And I think that part of the problem is that if we do not see somebody who we recognize as part of ourselves or in some way, we feel that we're not welcome. And therefore, all of the other things that go with it, the inability to recognize yourself, and this applies to not just lesbians, obviously, but if you don't see somebody that you think, well, that is somebody who will be sympathetic to what I'm saying, who will understand me, will know what I have gone through to get here, then we tend to just go, well, it's not for us. And historically, the Pride movement in particular has, as a rule, been gay white men. That is what you tend to see. And I know there's a lot of women I've had conversations with who have just said, we don't feel heard. We don't feel that it's offering anything for us. So I think the more people see that lesbians are there and are prominent and are taking their place and having an opinion, the better, because we can then start to represent the things that matter to us. For many years, when I first came out, or when I first moved to London as an out lesbian, I spent a lot of time almost introducing myself as, hello, I'm Debbie, I'm a lesbian, almost like it was one sentence. and people would look at me, and I know this is difficult to believe, but I actually look more like a lesbian then than I do now. And they'd look at me in this sort of, but of course you are, look at you sort of fashion. And then I reached a point where I thought to myself, do you know what? All my heterosexual friends do not walk into rooms and say, hello, I'm so-and-so, I'm heterosexual. I'm not doing this anymore. And I spent quite a few years not being not out, but just not shouting about it. And then I reached a point where I realized that I was at a certain age and not enough had changed. There wasn't that much that had changed from 30 years previously. And I'm not saying how old I am, but just saying that. And I thought to myself, no, enough. No, I did my bit, I thought, and I'd shouted about it quite a lot. And then I stopped shouting about it for a while. And then I was looking around and going, again, I still can't see me. I can't see people who look like me anymore. And I'm not saying everybody has to look like me. And I'm not saying that all lesbians must have very, very short hair and short fingernails and all those cliches. And many cats. I do have all of those things. And many cats in particular. But it doesn't, it's that whole thing of if you are, for instance, a teenager and you are looking around you, you need to see something that makes you go, I'm not the only one. And this is what Pride is about for me, and always has been. It's that first step that people take. And if you look up on the television or the theatre or anywhere else where there's great visibility and you see nobody that looks anything like you, sounds like you, you just go, well, I must be wrong. And this is where the problems lay, I believe, and this is what is an ongoing thing. And I think the more women, whatever they look like, who identify and say, excuse me, but, I think the more people will be empowered. And that's basically why I wander around with bright red hair and go, hello, I'm a lesbian again.
And the day that people stop caring about what your sexuality is or your gender or whatever is the day you can stop shouting about it.
Yeah. Which
and that might be a long way off yet.
Yeah, I feel I will be shouting for quite some time, unfortunately.
There are several lesbian flags. This one has symbolized dating back to ancient Greece. In Greek myth, the Amazons were a tribe of warrior women living in Asia Minor, and they were associated with the double-headed Labrys axe. The axe is also a symbol of goddesses Laphia, Artemis, and Demeter. In the 1970s, lesbian feminists adopted the Labrys as their symbol. The black triangle dates back to the Nazi era. The Nazis rounded up antisocial lesbian and bisexual women and put them in concentration camps, just as they made Jewish people wear a yellow Star of David and gay men wear a pink triangle. The black triangle was used to identify lesbians. Lesbians later adopted the triangle, as gay men did the pink triangle, as a defiant symbol of their community. Graphic designer Sean Campbell brought these symbols together to create the Labrys lesbian pride flag in 1999. Bear in mind, that's the same year I was born. Just putting it out there.
People, you know.
In the last few years, there have been some battles over the ownership of the flag. Some trans exclusionary radical feminists known as TERFs have adopted it as their symbol. However, others have fought back, insisting that the TERFs use of it doesn't mean the community should have to abandon it. Therefore, it continues to remain the flag for all. Debbie, what are your thoughts on this?
I absolutely love the Labrys. I think it's possibly one of my favorite things. And when I saw it coming back into fashion, and I'm seeing it on flags now in Pride, it gladdens my heart. I will be absolutely truthful. The fact that it's being used by the TERF community saddens my heart. But that's not going to stop me wearing it. I wore it in the 80s. I was saying in the break earlier on that I used to have it on a big t-shirt, and I mean, I'm talking massive. Labrys on the front of it on a pink triangle. I was very, very proud. I wore it all the time. I wore it to work. It really irritated people. It was great. I used to have it as a very, very large earring that I used to just swing in meetings when people were not doing what I wanted them to do. It was used on the lesbian strength banners during the marches in the 80s. It formed the T of the strength on one of the lesbian strength marches in the late 80s. It's a very, very powerful symbol, and it's meant to be a powerful symbol, and it is meant to show that we are here and that we should hold our place and we should hold our pride. And I think I really don't like the fact that anybody is using it in a way that is exclusionary. It is there to show power rather than to take power. That's my opinion.
The pink lesbian flag consists of 6 shades of red and pink colours and a white bar in the centre. The original design, known as the lipstick lesbian flag, includes a red kiss and was introduced in the weblog of This Lesbian Life in 2010. Both the pink and the lipstick lesbian flags represent homosexual women who have a more feminine gender expression. The original flag has not been widely adopted, however, its non-kiss variation attracted more use. The term has also been used as a derogatory term from within the community. For example, a more masculine identifying expressing lesbian might call a more feminine identifying expressing lesbian not a real lesbian, just a lipstick lesbian, implying that their sexuality is not complete because they still adhere to social expectations of femininity. Debbie, what are your thoughts on this?
I think that nobody should be told what is or isn't a lesbian, and just because the way you present is not anybody's business, is what I actually think. I'm actually married to a lipstick lesbian, would you believe? And we do this whole butch and femme thing, and we do it mainly to take the mickey out of people, because there is these assumptions. I'd like to point out that my lipstick lesbian wife is currently in the garden with a chainsaw. Just putting that out there. That is what she is doing. However, I have never been interested in makeup and things like that. I'm just not. It's as simple as that. It doesn't interest me. But that doesn't make me look at a woman who's wearing makeup and go, you must be. Because I just think it's absolute nonsense. I think everybody should be allowed to identify in any way they want. I did have actually somebody come up to me at a Pride festival once when I was selling flags, and they said, "What is this flag? What is a lipstick lesbian?" they said. And I pointed myself and said, "Clearly not me," which caused great mirth. And then my wife arrived and I went, "That would probably be one." Yes, I've heard the term, and I have heard it used in a very derogatory fashion about people, and to be, serious about the matter for a moment, there has also historically been some ill feeling from the lesbian community towards bisexual women, and in a very unpleasant fashion. And I'm hoping that we're actually getting over that and realizing that we should treat everybody with respect would be quite nice, and just be kind, and we shouldn't be judging people by the way that they look. I know gay men who wear much more makeup than me and much more makeup than my wife, and and it doesn't really matter. It's a very strange thing. I quite like the lesbian flag, but I probably wouldn't wander around with the one with the lipstick on it, because people would think I was a bit strange, because I don't look like I would be doing so. But I just think that everybody can identify whatever flag they feel like, and if they feel that flag is what they identify with, it's not for us to tell them.
As a woman who doesn't wear makeup, it is always quite interesting how people, everyone views you differently if you wear makeup and don't wear makeup. Sometimes I go through a phase of wearing makeup and I notice that people are much nicer to me. And then, of course, if you're in a marginalised community, it's really important that you still have people be nice to you, even if you don't choose to present the same way.
The butch lesbian flag is designed to represent lesbians with a more masculine or dominant personality, style, or identity. It's redesign of the original rainbow flag and the pink lesbian flag, which is associated with more femme lipstick lesbians. The colour scheme of blues, purples and greys and white was apparently just designed as a butch makeover of the flag. Debbie, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I can't say that I'm particularly fond of this flag. I find the whole butch lesbian argument a bit of a strange thing. I have stood at many a Pride event or an event in a gay pub or something over the years, and they've gone, "Oh, the lesbians are in. You can tell by the sensible shoes." Again, I think we're always in danger of pigeonholing people just because they are one thing or another visually, which doesn't actually make it true. And I think that it makes it very, very difficult for people who are not necessarily identifying as any of those things, who are just themselves. And everybody has the right to be just themselves. I personally wouldn't necessarily describe myself as a butch lesbian. I know that sounds like a strange thing. I wouldn't say that I'm not a butch lesbian, but it wouldn't be the first thing I said about myself, to be absolutely truthful. And therefore I find myself in a bit of a dichotomy, if you pardon the pun, of going, well, do I like this flag? Do I not? I prefer the Labris flag because I think it speaks of strength and it speaks of womanhood and it speaks of many, many things. I would probably, if I'm absolutely truthful, I would go rainbow or Labris flag. Those are the two things that I always identify under, and I'm quite happy to identify under those. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to sit there and go, well, actually, I really don't like your flag. I think that if you start saying, well, you have to have this flag because you look in a particular way, that you're on a very slippery slope.
A new lesbian flag modelled after the 7-banded pink flag was introduced on Tumblr in 2018, with colours dark orange representing gender nonconformity, orange for independence, light orange for community, white for unique relationships of womanhood, pink for serenity and peace, dusty pink for love and sex, and dark rose for femininity. A 5-stripe version was soon derived from the 2018 colours. In 2020, controversy arose over who had actually introduced an orange and pink lesbian flag. Debbie, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm not entirely sure. If I'm absolutely truthful, I'm not entirely sure. I'm very much in favour of the gender nonconformity being recognised as part of our community, because again, I think that takes that back to the, you know, you could be very, very, very good and wear lipstick, and there is nothing that says that you can't, and there is nothing that says you shouldn't be able to, and there shouldn't be. And you can be very, very, very femme and wave a chainsaw around in my garden. I don't mind. The gender nonconformity part of it, I have to say, appeals to me. The rest of it, I'm not entirely sure is the truth.
Pre-pandemic, we travelled over 5,000 miles by road and by train, supporting Pride events across the south of the UK. We have also officiated a number of training events for blue chip and global organisations, presenting to them what they need to know about LGBTQ+ matters and how to be more inclusive. Please don't forget to click the like button and to subscribe, and also don't forget to hit the bell button on YouTube to ensure that you catch the next episode of Under the Brolly. We also have an Etsy store where you can buy our guide to LGBT+, as well as keyrings, badges, coasters, and more with your flag on it. All handmade by our team of volunteers. This helps us do what we do, especially in these more challenging times. World Autism Awareness Day is an internationally recognised day on the 2nd of April every year, encouraging member states and the United Nations to take measures to raise acceptance about autistic people. We are joined by Rachel and Ian Cotton from Reading Autistic Pride.
Hello.
Today we have got some questions for Rachel and Ian from Reading Autistic Pride. The first question that I have to ask you today is who is the autistic community, and is it true they are more likely to be LGBTQ+?
Okay. Well, the autistic community is still vastly underdiagnosed. So at the minute, there's the most accurate figure we have is from the United States that says 1 in 49, 1 in 59 or 56. There was a study done in South Korea that showed 1 in 35, and I suspect that one is much more accurate. Currently, we are not diagnosing people who are born female. That's an important distinction to make, because not everybody always presents as female or continues to say presenting as female, and they're always underdiagnosed. Even men that present in what is considered to be a feminine way, excuse the binary, I know it doesn't exist, but this is how the diagnosticians see it, they get underdiagnosed too. And obviously anyone who is from any ethnic minority is underdiagnosed. So the autistic community is a lot larger than we currently think. I would suggest it's about 1 in 30, possibly a bit higher, given if you have the caveat for the 1 in 56, you know, that essentially you double it. And yes, a lot more are likely to be LGBT+. There was a study done, a bit of research done within the community about 5 years ago that showed that only 49% of autistic men identified as straight, which I thought was fascinating. Similar, much higher for women as well, you know, similar levels of neuroqueerness and across the whole board of autistic expression and people. So yes, we don't know why that is. It's fascinating. It's not discussed much. Academics aren't particularly interested in looking into it, but I think they should. And also particularly trans people as well. One study claimed that every single trans person was autistic. And I've spoken to a lot of trans people about that, and they're not particularly happy about it. So that's fair enough. And other studies seem to suggest it's about 50%. Either way, autistic people are more likely to be gender diverse.
I have a theory, and it is only a sort of sketchy theory, that the reason you get a higher incidence in the autistic community is that autistic people tend to be more honest.
Yes.
So they tend not to disguise who they are.
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily accounts entirely for the difference, but it may account for some of it.
What problems do autistic people face in the community?
I wanted to be asked this because it's very similar in some ways to the LGBTQ plus community. You know, it's a problem of representation and visibility. And also, as well as not being seen, when we are seen, people don't like it. And that's obviously, that's a problem you face too, sadly. You know, they did a really interesting piece of research very recently in the last year, where they had a group of autistic people and a group of non-autistic people. And they said to the autistic people, who are you likely to talk to or approach a conversation with? And the autistic people essentially said everybody. And then they asked the non-autistic people the same question, and they only chose non-autistic people to speak to. They didn't necessarily want to talk to autistic people. So the difficulty with that is that a lot of the education that we go through at school is that we are taught that we have to hide ourselves, we have to be more socially compliant, we have to do X, Y, and Z. And I think we actually already are. It's other people rejecting us, and we have no power about what people think about us. You know, we can't do anything about it. So all the things that we're told to do, be more resilient, be more accepting, be more this, well, we are. It's just that everyone else isn't. So, you know, and obviously that carries on lifelong. So autistic people have high rates of PTSD. We have high rates of suicide, and we also die earlier as a result. Part of the problems of the communication that we face is we express pain differently. So if we go to the doctor, we won't get diagnosed with the same rate as a non-autistic person would. And the NHS has done some really interesting research, and it shows that autistic people's general age of death is 55. I'm 49, he's 57, so you can imagine how we feel about that. And if you have a learning disability, it's even low, it's about 36. So if you're autistic with a learning disability, the lifespan that you can expect in this country, 2021, is 36 years old, especially if you're female.
What is ABA therapy?
Okay, well, again, glad we're talking about this. Wanted to bring it up. In the House of Commons at the minute, quite recently, we've been talking about conversion therapy for gay people, LGBT people, obviously. I think it was mainly aimed at men, I'm not entirely sure, but it's the same theory, and it's aimed at autistic people. It's exactly the same thing. A guy called Love Us described autistic people as not being essentially human until we've learned how to behave properly. It's just exactly the same as conversion therapy. It's meant to change from one state to another. You know what conversion therapy does to the LGBTQ+ community? It's doing it to the autistic one. The big problem is that lots of people don't see the harm that it causes. We've only had one study to show that it causes PTSD, and hardly anyone is listening. And there's a lot of money behind it, and it feels quite vulnerable, to be honest. A lot of the big charities use it. I'm not going to name names for obvious reasons. And they use it to control and coerce people in the care homes and in schools. And you can see why some of the problems happen in some of the care homes, because people have got PTSD from the way they're being treated. Of course, they're going to act out.
What does that have to do with the queer community?
Because we're treated essentially the same way, but we're quite a few years behind, I think, in our response to it. You know, you've had conversion therapy, you've had a lot of comments against it, and it's now finally being discussed as being a bad thing, being recognised universally as a bad thing. Whereas ABA for us is still unilaterally seen as the best treatment that you can have, that we could have. So like if you're in the States, for example, and you're trying to get insurance to treat your kid, everyone says, oh, you need to put them for ABA therapy. We don't need any therapy, we're just autistic. We need a sensory appropriate environment. We need somewhere it's not too loud, you know, where we can hear what's going on, where we can see what's going on. We don't need therapy to help us cope with that, because if we cope with it, we'll end up breaking down somewhere else.
So what is Autistic Pride?
Okay, well, it's a concept that came up with by Gwen Nelson, who used to run a group called Aspies for Freedom, I think right back in the 1990s in Wales. They had an idea that they should celebrate being autistic to combat the hatred felt towards autistic people. And they had a person whose birthday it was on June 16th. And they decided that would be their Autistic Pride Day. And it celebrated now within the community just to kind of cope with the ableism that we face on a daily basis. And it does draw its inspiration both from the gay pride movement and the black pride movement as well. You know, the black pride was 50s, 60s, gay pride sort of got going in 70s, 80s, I guess, you know. And I think it's just the same, it's quieter because we're autistic, we don't like loud noises and lots of bright colours, sadly. Some of us love it, but, you know, we have to try and make it accessible to everybody. But it's just a general movement within the community to say, you know, we're here, we don't want to be ABA'd, we want to live our lives without being bleached. Bleaching is when they put bleach up the anuses of autistic children to rid them of intestinal parasites that they think will then cure the person of being autistic. So it's just to stand against that. It sometimes feels like quite a lonely place to be, not within the autistic community, but in the community at large, because it's like, why are you proud of a disability? Why are you proud of being disordered?
In Reading, how long have it been going on pre-pandemic?
I think we did it for about 5 years. We did speak to Reading Pride via Facebook before we did the first one, because I was worried about appropriating the name Pride. That was quite important to me, because obviously so many of the members of the community are going to be from the LGBT community. I thought it was really good that we don't put any backs up to start off with, and you were fine with it, so they were fine with it, so that was really good. And we just started off, we do it in the local Prospect Park trains, and we started off at 300 people coming a year. We're now up to 800, and we're trying to focus more on attracting the diverse populations that are represented within the community. Try and make sure we've got everything. That's why we had MyUmbrella and Reading Pride there a few, I think 2 years ago now, pre-pandemic, because we would normally be planning one in a couple of months' time. Yeah, 2019, and that was great to have you there. We really appreciated that, because it, you know, gave us an extra something.
With the 5 plan, are there any plans to have an Autistic Pride in Reading this year?
We've been going backwards and forwards on this one. I don't think it's safe. The biggest community to die as a result of COVID was the learning disabled community. Now, 1 in 20% of the autistic community also has a learning disability. Those aren't the official figures, but those are figures researched within the community, so I'll rely on those because they're better done. And to protect that community, I don't think it's safe. The learning disabled community bore the highest brunt, mainly through the care home scandals and things of COVID. So I think 1 in 36 of the deaths was from a learning disabled person, which was the highest one. So I don't think we can open up until everyone's safe. We are doing an online one. So if people go to the Autistic Pride Alliance, they will see details there, and we will share details on our own social media.
We did one last year. We did an online event with the other Autistic Pride organisations, and you can find it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think that the more we have conversations like this, the more useful they are for us to understand and for us not to make swinging judgments. I think is probably what I would say, is that people assume that they know, having spoken to one person, what everybody needs, and it's not correct. And I think that we need to have this conversation and keep having this conversation, and until people actually understand what that line is and where we need to address it. And I think that I'm very grateful for this conversation actually now, because I now know something I didn't know before. Well, I know several things I didn't know before, which is great.
This episode and all of our previous episodes can be found on our website at www.myumbrella.org.uk, or you can listen to it on the go via Spotify and iTunes. Just search for Under the Brolly. Before we say our goodbyes, to close this episode, we do have an amazing charity single released on the 12th of February 2012. It Does Get Better by the L Project, to raise awareness of homophobic bullying, and the meaning behind the song still rings true today. And on that note, it's a farewell from me, and it's also a farewell from Debbie, Ian, and Rachel. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Could you walk through town, see a boy beaten down against a wall, and think of nothing at all? Do you think of nothing at all?
For the ones who can't see or not hear any sounds in this life,
Try to feel what that's like, 'cause no one gets to decide. When days don't seem right, just shine, 'cause this life is yours.